Welcome back to another episode of Daily Neville. This episode marks the beginning of Season 4, and the source text for Season 4 is Neville Goddard's 1942 book, Freedom for All, a practical application of the Bible. I'm excited about Season 4 because in Season 4 we're going to go deeper into the metaphysical origins of the Bible, and we're going to learn in deeper and more beautiful ways how the stories told within the text of the Bible illustrate to us the foundational principles that make this earthly plane, this earthly reality, what it is. Neville titles this book Freedom for All, and that's truly what the Bible is all about. The Bible is a metaphysical text that contains within it freedom for all, the secrets of how humans being in this form, how God being man can experience true freedom by applying these metaphysical principles. Neville subtitled this book, A Practical Application of the Bible. My friends, the Bible for so many, countless generations has been deeply and vastly misunderstood. For so many countless generations, scholars have taken to the Bible as though it was written as physical history, when in truth, its authors had no intention of the stories being interpreted as physical, three-dimensional history, but rather as psychological and spiritual history. This Bible is the history of God. This Bible is the history of God being man. And the Bible, in this case, Neville is going to explain to us how the Bible contains the ability for practical application. We can actually practically apply the stories of the Bible when we have the higher understanding, when we have the ability to perceive the truth that is layered within each of these metaphysical stories. The Bible is the living Word of God. And what I mean by that is there's a depth and a complexity and also simplicity to these ideas, and they do come alive, particularly when you learn to see past the 3D interpretation into the metaphysical, higher dimensional interpretation of these stories. And that's exactly what Season 4 is all about. In Season 4, we're going to go very deeply into the practical application of these sacred metaphysical ideas contained within the Bible. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and dive on in to Freedom for All, a practical application of the Bible by Neville Goddard. Neville starts this book with a preface, and the preface reads, "Public opinion will not long endure a theory which does not work in practice. Today, probably more than ever before, man demands proof of the truth of even his highest ideal. For ultimate satisfaction, man must find a principle which is for him a way of life, a principle which he can experience as true." Now, what Neville is saying here is that if there's something that cannot be practically applied, that theory will not long be endured, meaning that there needs to be a pragmatic application of any idea in order for it to truly be venerated as valuable. And what Neville is saying here is man demands proof of the truth of even his highest ideal, meaning the ideas don't stand alone just in theory. There needs to be proof. And for ultimate satisfaction, man must find the principle which is for him a way of life, a principle which he can experience as true, meaning that if I'm telling you that something is true, that's not enough. If Neville's telling you that something is true, that's not enough. If a pastor in the pulpit is telling you that something is true, that is not enough. You must experience truth for yourself. For ultimate satisfaction, it must be a principle, a way of life, which you can experience as being true for yourself. This is why the Bible says, test yourselves. Do you not realize that Jesus Christ is in you? Unless, of course, you fail to meet the test, meaning that even the Bible itself speaks of testing. And what I mean by that is testing, experiencing as true for yourself. Not just because you read it somewhere, not just because the internet told you that it was true, not just because you listened to a YouTube video that told you that it was true. You have to put it to the test for yourself to determine that Christ Jesus is indeed alive in you. Neville continues. He writes, "I believe I have discovered just such a principle in the greatest of all sacred writings, the Bible. Drawn from my own mystical illumination, this book reveals the truth buried within the stories of the Old and New Testaments alike. Briefly, this book states that consciousness is the one and only reality, that consciousness is the cause and manifestation is the effect. It draws the reader's attention to this fact constantly, that the reader may always keep first things first. Having laid the foundation that a change of consciousness is essential to bring about any change of expression or any change of your world, you must first change your consciousness. This book explains to the reader a dozen different ways to bring about such a change of consciousness. This is a realistic and constructive principle that works. The revelation it contains, if applied, will set you free. And that, my friends, is true of this book, just as it is true of the Bible, because this book is intended to help the Bible come alive by really revealing the ways that the Bible is a message, a truth, a key to unlock our chains and set us free. Beginning with chapter 1, the oneness of God. Neville writes, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. Hear, O Israel. Hear, O man made of the very substance of God. You and God are one and undivided. Man, the world, and all within it are conditioned states of the unconditioned one God. You are this one. You are this one God. You are God, and you are currently conditioned as man. All that you believe God to be, you are. But you will never know this to be true until you stop claiming it of another and recognize this seeming other to be yourself." We're going to start right there, right here in the beginning, right in the first paragraph of this book. Neville is saying, you are this one God. Hear, O Israel, the Lord, our God is one Lord, meaning that all that we observe in this reality in essence is one thing, and it is God. There's nothing but God in this world. Everything that you can observe, everything that you can see, everything you can interact with or sense or perceive is God. And you are part of this one thing, which is God. But you will never know that this is true until you stop conditioning yourself to be separate by believing that God is something over there or someone up in the clouds or some principle external to yourself. As long as you put off the idea of God onto another, onto an external being, you are ignoring this commandment, this scripture, which says, "Hear, O Israel," which is hear all mankind. Mankind is Israel. The Lord our God is one Lord. As long as you're displacing this onto another and putting God outside of yourself, you are creating false gods, because in truth, God is one, and you are one with God. Continue with Neville's words. He says, "God and man, spirit and matter, the formless and the formed, the creator and the creation, the cause and the effect, your Father and you are one. This one, in whom all conditioned states live and move and have their being, is your I am, your unconditioned consciousness." So there's one thing, and it's God. And God at its source is unconditioned, meaning it literally contains everything. It's unconditioned. It's literally unconditioned awareness. It's infinite and it's eternal and it's expansive in a way that's hard for humans to comprehend. And we are that masquerading as this. And what I mean by that is we are conditioned or playing the part or dreaming the dream of being humans. That is the part that we are playing right now. And then, of course, you can layer additional layers of identity on top of just the base layer of being human. But that does not change the fact that at source, we are one. We are one unconditioned eternal awareness. That is who you and I are. We are one thing, and it's unconditioned eternal awareness. And in this temporary existence that we have right now, you and I are pretending, in a manner of speaking, to be humans. Now, Neville would say, not pretending, we actually did become this, meaning that we had to forget that we're this one thing on some level to truly experience being this thing, which appears to be separate. And yet we can also agree that this is a temporary role that we are playing. And this temporary role that we are playing does not infringe upon the original source that we all are. Continuing with Neville's words, he says, "Unconditioned consciousness is God, the one and only reality. By unconditioned consciousness is meant a sense of awareness, a sense of knowing that I am, apart from knowing who I am. The consciousness of being divorced from that which I am conscious of being. I am aware of being man, but I need not be man to be aware of being. And that's the difference. There's a part of my awareness which transcends the part of my awareness that is aware of being human. And that part of my awareness is the unconditioned, faceless, formless, eternal part of my awareness. Before I became aware of being someone, I, unconditioned awareness, was simply aware of being. And this awareness does not depend upon being someone. I am self-existent, unconditioned consciousness. Yes, I became aware of being someone, and I shall become aware of being someone other than this that I am now aware of being, but I'm eternally aware of being, whether I am unconditioned formlessness or I am conditioned form. This is the root premise that the entire Bible is written upon. And Neville is illustrating this as his number one concept, the oneness of God. The Bible does not make sense in any way. It is irrational, illogical, and makes no sense unless you understand this original core premise. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. All things in eternity, all things in existence are one thing. And we are conditioned to be subsets of that one thing, but does not change the fact that we are part of that one thing, meaning that we are God. God is not outside of ourselves. We, all that we are, all of our awareness at all levels, there's nothing but God in the world. We all are, and everything that we can interact with and touch is God. There's one thing that is God, and it's all of us. And that's the source premise upon which the Bible is written. And it doesn't make sense to interpret it any other way. And that's why Neville starts here. It's like, look, you need to understand this as a premise, as a fundamental root premise. Before we go any further, you need to understand this, because this is the only way that any of the other stories are going to make any sense. Continuing with Neville's words, he says, as the conditioned state, I, a man, might forget who I am or where I am, but I cannot forget that I am. This knowing, this awareness that I am, this awareness of being is the only reality. This unconditioned consciousness, the I am, is that knowing reality in whom all conditioned states, all conceptions of myself begin and end. But whichever remains the unknown knowing being when all of the known ceases to be. All that I have ever believed myself to be, all that I now believe myself to be, and all that I ever shall believe myself to be, are but attempts to know myself. Attempts to know myself, my true self, which is the unknown, undefined reality. This unknown knowing one, or unconditioned consciousness, is my true being, the one and only reality. I am the unconditioned reality, conditioned as that which I believe myself to be. I am the believer, limited by my beliefs, the knower defined by the known. The world is my conditioned consciousness objectified. That which I feel and believe to be true of myself is now projected in space as my world. The world, which is my mirrored self, ever bears witness of the state of consciousness in which I live. Now, this, at first glance, appears to be a metaphysical, somewhat theological, and philosophical paragraph. And when I look at this, I see science. I see science because this is a metaphysical, psychological, philosophical interpretation of quantum science, of a quantum reality, of a quantum field which exists with limitless possibilities and is collapsed through the act of observation. Now, if you've studied quantum physics at all, hopefully you know what I'm talking about. That is that concept applied to the very fundamental fabric of reality that you and I are living with and engaging in right now. This is the daily, physical, practical application of quantum physics. This unknowing one, Neville says, or unconditioned consciousness, Neville says, or the quantum reality itself is my true being. We are the quantum field. That is our true being. It is the one and only reality. I am the unconditioned reality or quantum field conditioned through observation as that which I believe myself to be. The observer effect. I am the believer, the observer, limited by my beliefs, my observations. I am the knower, the observer, defined by the known, that which I choose to observe and tell stories about. Because what we observe can be different than the stories we tell about it. So keep that in mind. It's an incredibly important part of understanding these ideas. It's not just the observation, it's the story. It's the narrative that we apply to the observation. That's that where we get into the world of polarity thinking. I just see something happen and then it's a story that I tell that makes it good or bad or ugly or beautiful or indifferent. There is no chance or accident responsible for the things that happen to me or the environment in which I find myself. Nor is predestined fate the author of my fortunes or misfortunes. Innocence and guilt are mere words with no meaning to the law of consciousness, except as they reflect the state of consciousness itself. Powerful, powerful introduction to this incredible book. There are secrets about the quantum field that are explained in tremendous detail, albeit using non-scientific language, all throughout the Bible, all throughout all mystic writings, all throughout all metaphysical studies and explorations. Science and theology are two paths up the same mountain. And I believe that as we go through this book, we will find that to be true in even more clearly defined ways as we progress with these teachings. But for right now, I'm going to leave you here with this thought. You are the source of your entire reality because you are your entire reality, conditioned to a local physical identity of being human. And that knowledge alone, my friends, that knowledge alone sets you free. Imagine wisely, my friends, and I will see you all in the next